Hey, welcome. I'm Peter Snauwaard of What's on Your Mind and What's in Your Heart. Today I give you another English episode, and it's What's on Your Mind. We have one of the co-founders of Collibra. Collibra is actually originally a Belgian-founded company in Brussels, which has more than 1,000 persons working there. It's called Unicorn, which means that it has a valuation of more than 1 billion euros. And I talk with Stijn. I talk about what they're actually doing, because it's not clear. The impact of generative AI, so ChatGPT, on their technology, and all the personal lessons and insights that he has learned throughout the 15 years of starting the company with a couple of people and now being one of the C-level persons and managing between brackets 1,000 people. Enjoy, Stijn.
Welcome to What's on Your Mind with Peter Snauwaard. Every week, a guest talks about his or her story, and that story can inspire you to change your own. Here's Peter.
Hi, Stijn.
Hey, Peter.
Hi. Now we're going to immediately dive into the core. And Collibra is one of the Belgian unicorns. Congratulations, 15 years in a row. Still alive, more than 1,000 people. I'm going to start with the most simple question there is. What the hell does or offer Collibra? Because it's not 100% clear. It's something with data, but bring us into what Collibra is doing or offering to the world, Stijn.
Yes. Well, first of all, hi, Peter, and thanks for having me over. And you are on the money, as a matter of fact, when it comes to the 15 years of Collibra, because June 19th will be Collibra's 15th birthday. So it's been quite a ride, and we've seen a lot of things over those 15 years, as you can imagine. And one of the challenges we've been having as a company is that people find it relatively hard to understand what it is that we are offering or doing. And I believe that that's because we have for years already now a category creation strategy, which means that what we do is create a new type of software. So in that sense, it's hard to fit into, well, are you like a data warehouse, or are you like a database, or are you like a visualization tool? Well, we are a data intelligence piece of software. And that's the software category that we are creating, that we have been creating for 15 years, and that we'll probably continue to create for the next decade. And I'll explain a little bit what it is, right? But as a comparison, you could say, okay, try to explain to something what an ERP system is when the category of ERP didn't exist yet, or try to explain to something what a CRM system is, and you've never done CRM things, and the category of software doesn't exist. So within 10 years, our category will hopefully be mainstream as well, and we'll continue to make that happen. But essentially what we do, data intelligence, is connecting the data all the way to the algorithms, insights, people, and ultimately outcomes. So from data to the outcomes. And the software that we offer is called the Data Intelligence Cloud. And that's what we call a system of engagement for the data assets. Just like you have IT assets, right? Like your phones or your desktops, desktop computers in large organizations. And to manage that at scale, you have a system of engagement, like a ServiceNow, right? To manage your pipeline or your sales assets at scale, you have a CRM system, which allows you to have all of the people with their different roles to collaborate around the same sales asset. And this is now happening with data as well. Data is becoming so important, already for more than 15 years, but will continue on in my view. And again, for organizations to manage that data asset at scale, they need a system of engagement for the data asset. And that is the position that Collibra takes in the market. Now you heard me, right? But whether you understood me is another matter, right, Peter? You have a clue as to what we do by now.
No. Can you give me of course I understand, but it still sounds you sound like an Eckhart Tolle of data or something like that. So I have two questions. The first one is, can you give me a typical use case of a customer that a use case of how they implemented Collibra to make it really tactical? And the second question is, I mean, you're talking about we exist 15 years. As you know, sometimes an idea or a technology can just wipe out a complete industry in a couple of years. I mean, the cliche of an Instagram replacing a Kodak, and the same for the video renting shops, which has been replaced by the Netflixes. I mean, there is a small technology called generative AI or ChatGPT as an example, which is hyped at the moment. And although everybody thinks this is brand new, it's AI exists already since 75 from the previous century. What is the impact of AI? Is it a competitor of yours, or going to embrace that technology and upgrade the Collibra tech stack into God's mode? Two questions in one, I know.
Yes, indeed. So 2 questions. I'll take the generative AI second, right? That hype that's ongoing right now. I would say AI, like you said correctly, has had its winters and its summers. And now it's having another summer, a quite hot one. But we'll get back to that in a minute. First, the use case you said, right? That was the first question. So I'll pick one, and we'll do it as a little game, Peter, because I've learned that that's an easy way to get people to understand what we do. And then I'll fan out to all the other use cases that our customers do with our software. So play with me for just a second, 30 seconds, and imagine that you work in a large organization. Take a large bank, telco, hospital, government, what have you, right? They have a lot of data all over the place. Now, if you work in an organization like that, I will bet with you that it's easier for you to buy a book online. You know, you can go to bol.com, you can go to amazon.com, and you can buy a book, and it's there next day on your doorstep, maybe even same day. But if you are in a large organization, it's easier to do that than to find your own data in your own organization. And that's because those organizations, they don't have a place where they can go and search for data. They start asking other people, their friends in the company, they're emailing them, they're Slacking or Teamsing them, calling them. They're literally navigating tribal knowledge to hopefully get to the right data, ? And what Collibra does, or one of the use cases that our customers do with us, is we offer them a catalog where this large organization can register and display, as in a sort of marketplace, their data assets. So just like you buy a book online, you can now go into your organization's data catalog and say, okay, where's my customer data, or where's this or that or the other? And it's an extension, not just data, but also data products, but that's another matter. And that's one use case, because turns out what's been happening in large organizations, they've been buying data things for years, right? They bought data warehouses 20 years ago. They bought data platforms 10 years ago. Now they're buying cloud data warehouses. They bought all sorts of other databases and so on and so forth. But if you look at what the organization then struggles with, is they don't have a problem setting up this data warehouse, for example, right? They don't have a problem putting data in it. Quite the contrary. Now the business is asking, what is in my data lake? And that's why they want to put a catalog on top of it. And then don't just put the catalog on top of that one store of data, but they have tens or dozens or hundreds or thousands of databases and data warehouses. And the catalog sits over all of those because, you know, for a business user, you don't really care if the data is in warehouse X or database Y. You care that you can actually start doing stuff with the data and you want to find it as fast as possible. That's the catalog. Collibra has governance cases around roles and responsibilities around the data, who is actually the owner of the data. The data marketplace, trusted business reporting, cloud data migration. I mean, there's literally dozens of use cases we have together with our customers. And that's normal, because once the customer starts to use our platform, they typically use it for a first internal audience, maybe the data stewards or the data scientists or people from legal in privacy, for example, or other stakeholders. And when they have adoption with those champions with that use case, for example, of cataloging, then they say, okay, who else should we turn into a data champion? Who else is a data citizen in this company that we should be servicing with this platform? And then it fans out into a whole roadmap of use cases. So it's like a new way of working with the data assets. Does that help a little bit more?
Yes. And then I'm going to, before I let you go to the second question, then a new question pops up. is then, because I really believe that a lot of companies are making these huge projects based on three principles. Or is it going to add extra revenue streams? Is it going to cut costs?
Save costs?
Or is or is it going to make sure that I'm compliant, especially banks and things like that? I assume then that that most of these cases start with a kind of pain of, you mentioned the privacy one. That's a compliancy case for me. That it's really, that they have difficult because they have a kind of a litigation case, and then they have to pop up all the data, and they cannot find all the right data, and it's a very manual task, labor task, to get all the right data in to make a case. Is that correct?
So why do companies do that, right? Like, are they trying to make money, save cost, or be compliant? I'll explain that from the angle of maybe the chief data officer. So 15 years of Collibra, and also roughly 15 years of that new data boss role that has been coming into existence. I'm not going to claim that Collibra created the role or that we made it grow necessarily. We were just in the market at that same time, which is a little bit of an accident, but also a happy one, of course. The first generation, now I'm quoting from Gartner, right? So they've done a study on this, and we've seen that happen. So the first generation of the chief data officer, the boss of that data asset, they were very compliance driven. They were in the biggest banks in the world. There was BCBS 239, some regulation. There was a response to the 2008 crisis, and they literally said, okay, banks, obviously you don't know what your risk reporting looks like. You don't know where the data comes from or what your counterparty risk is. So, put a chief data officer in place, start doing data governance, start doing data quality, because you need to bring transparency and control around your data assets. All the biggest banks started to do that, smaller banks followed, and so on and so forth. And then it fed into all industries. So first generation. Now, this is a stack of talent skills that you need for that role. So the second generation was more offensive. How do I actually, as a chief data officer, help the organization to make money with data? And then you have the third generation, which is how do I support digital transformation programs? And currently, that's still today, you have the fourth generation. Remember, it's a stack of talent. So if you're starting now as a CDO, you still have to do the compliancy things. They're not going to go away. Privacy is increasing. AI regulation is upcoming. So there's a lot more reasons to be compliant. But you want to partner with your privacy counterparts and legal or your security people. But the fourth generation is all about data products. How can I put a wrapper around data? How can I package it, sell the data directly, or package it in an AI model, or sell the insights directly? How can I help the business make money and put, a data product? For me, I literally call it the shortest conceptual distance between the data and the dollar or the euro or the whatever, right? So do people do this for cost savings, making money, or being compliant? I would say they're doing it for all three. But because of historical reasons, I would argue you still see a lot of initiatives that have a priority around compliance. And I always challenge that, because if you get stuck or you overcommit your resources on only the compliance side, you're sort of 3 generations behind already and you're just starting out. So I always try to move people up into the stack and try to get them to focus on the data products, because that's where the value is to be had, right? And if they want to justify their existence in an organization, they need to contribute, right? Budgets are under pressure. They need to save costs, but also they need to find new ways to make money. That's my elaborate answer to your which one is it question. All of them.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one, because in order to monetize the data, there is, in the digital transformation era, I would call it, there is this kind of personalization where a lot of companies try to give you a personalized experience, so that they are not going to sell any, lingerie to me as a 48 male, because they are aware of all the data and all the things that I ever bought with that company. So which actually makes the experience with that company more optimized. So it's an interesting one. Now, but the thing is, the second part of the question is the AI thing. I mean, if I would have been at a distance, like a CEO looking at Collibra, knowing nothing about data, we have to do something, data is a new gold, blah, blah, blah stuff. I would then say, but Collibra, I mean, isn't AI or ChatGPT? I mean, like ChatGPT has been bought, I believe, by Microsoft, by 8 million or whatever it was, a billion. I mean, where's your spot there? Is it competition? Is it an extra feed into Collibra, or how? What's your take on that, Stijn?
So I have an elaborate take. So if you permit me a couple of minutes of rambling as I think out loud, I think it's a great opportunity, but you have to put it in the right context, right? Because we know AI for a long time, and most of the old AI that's pre-November 2022 is now considered not AI anymore, at least in the mainstream perception in the world. It's still AI, right? But they feel a little bit sidelined almost. What happened in November is that indeed the large language models were unleashed upon the world to the mainstream public by OpenAI. And soon after, like every week, there's literally new stuff coming out. It was only a month ago, Google I.O. and all Sundar Pichai was talking about, the CEO of Google. He was like, okay, we have a Vertex database and we have the Palm model and we have this and that and the other. And if you follow this, it's literally every week something new is coming out. So you're looking at massive creative destruction, but also a complete change in perception because AI is now being equalized to generative AI or large language models. So that's like a subsection of AI, but this is the one that everybody talks about. I mean, you can do it yourself, Peter. I did a Google Trends analysis. It's a very simple one. You go back worldwide to 2014, and you put two topics in there. You put the topic of Bitcoin, and you put the topic of artificial intelligence. And then you literally see two spikes of Bitcoin. That was when your uncle and your aunt and your nephew at Christmas, everybody was talking about Bitcoin, right? And the same thing happened in November of last year. Everybody started to talk about. I mean, you're going to the bakery, boom, they're talking about generative AI. They talk about AI, but they mean the generative AI thing. And I think the exciting thing about the technology is that it has indeed done something that previously was, the domain of only a few experts that now has been democratized to everyone. I mean, you don't even need to have been to school anymore. They'll teach you this stuff in school. And that's important because whether you're a lawyer writing contracts or in marketing, writing out marketing emails or writing documentation or a coder making SQL or Java code or anything else, right? All these languages can be generated. And I don't know about you, Peter, right? But if I need to create something new, I open up a Google Docs or a Word document and I'm looking at this empty page and the procrastination hits me. I go, oh, the fear of the empty page. And now I can just say, well, give me something to start from. And this is where I would caution also the audience a little bit, because for me, AI right now is a little bit like ask an intern, right? So when you ask, hey, write me a legal text, the intern, right, the AI is going to come back with something and it might look, good and professional and eloquent, and you can, turn it into pirate style that everything is ARR or something like that, right? So it needs to be interactive. So like you would challenge an intern, hey, you're missing this, you're missing that, are you sure about this? You would also, in that interaction and that dialogue, the prompts, you would also challenge the AI to complete it. And then you're going to have to check it yourself and fact check it, right? So that's really important if you want to get real value out of it. But in essence, this means this is productivity, right? So this is efficiency gains for coders. They could maybe work 10, 30% more efficient because they can now ask it to, create a whole scaffolding of pre-existing code that actually runs. So there's a lot of efficiency gains for all knowledge workers in all organizations. So I would argue, if you're not using this today in an organization or, this year or next year, you don't have to hurry necessarily, right? But at the same time, you're going to have to use it at some point in time. Just like the organization learned to use phones and computers and the internet, it made you more productive. Hopefully this will do that too for you. But you got to start practicing with it. And I think that for organizations, that's a big challenge because it's a massive creative destruction. every week something new is coming out. So like I was trying this last week and it's already invalid. So it's hard to plan right now. You got to experiment and look at what the big vendors like a Microsoft or a Google or an Amazon or a Databricks or Snowflake, what those players are doing really. Now, how does it play for us? For us, it's just another great opportunity. I always compare AI a little bit to Pac-Man and the little nuggets, right, to data. Little Pac-Man cannot operate if he's not eating the data. I mean, you're literally training AI on data. And yes, those large language models have been pre-trained on the internet of data, if you will. But for your specific domain, in a hospital or in a bank or in your part of the business, you probably have additional data that you can then train it on or fine tune it on or add to it or have the large language model talk to the thing. So for us, it's yet another business driver in the market that will make organizations be more diligent about their data asset, take more care of it, not treat it as an exhaust, but really as an asset. And again, that's our business. So in that sense, it's yet another business driver in the market. And especially if you add the regulation onto it that's upcoming. I mean, just this week, there was a vote, I believe, in the EU. They voted on the AI regulation, so it's going into this process, right? And probably by the end of the year, they expect it to be upvoted by all the member states. So let's say over the next 3 years, if an organization has any kind of AI in production, they want to classify it risk-wise according to 4 criteria. No risk, so not a lot of controls needed. But then you have very high risk, like minority report stuff, predictive policing. They're like, you can't do that. So that's illegal, right? So they have a system of classification that way. And organizations will have to put those models in production. They could have thousands of these models in production, but they're going to have to wrap controls around it and make sure that they don't put the ones in production that are illegal or out in the wrong risk classification. So again, this will cause ownership around the data asset that goes into the AI model, but also on the AI model itself, because that's a data product and data product need owners. So for us, this is good. Now, how is this for us as a software vendor? How can we use this technology? Well, everybody's using it for something, right? Like Google is using it to generate a document, like templates, but very rich ones. Or Adobe is making, like a magic lasso or whatever they call it, but then one that literally can auto-complete pictures based on a small one. So it's very impressive. And equally, we're looking at this technology to do things for us that, were hard to automate before or impossible to automate before. So for example, it can do metadata generation, right? Because stewards often have to say, what does this table mean? What does this data mean? And now, again, the Ask an Intern can come up with something and say, well, you have a blank page, but I think here's something. It's customer data, so it's probably about customers, yada, 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 right? So it gives you something to start from. Or SQL generation, for example. You're sitting in that catalog, you're shopping for the data, and then the catalog also can then tell you, well, hey, you want to start playing with that data a little bit? Because I can run a few queries for you if you want. So those are things that, I wouldn't say they were impossible before, but their performance would be abysmal. So you would just not use it. It would be like a Clippy, remember from 20 years ago?
Yep.
A widget, right? So that's how we look at it as a business opportunity in the market, but also as a new capability that we can use to make our own software better and automate more for our users. Hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah. Now I'm going to go up a little bit. We're going to go meta. I mean, I assume we share the same young age ish. I mean, you've been 15 years with Collibra, one of the founders. And I wonder, 15 years ago, maybe it's because I'm being nostalgic or romantic. It seemed like 15 years ago was 2008. So Yeah, YouTube just started. What was it?
right?
I think 2006. AWS was also started, which was in the beginning. And I still remember looking at YouTube. I remember that time very vividly, and I was like, "Yeah, it's technology to put cat videos on." I mean, this video is going to be on YouTube. So, I mean, the use case and the commodity of YouTube. My son is watching YouTube more. He's never watching television. I think he will never, the VRT or VTM or whatever they called, it's not his thing anymore. It's YouTube. So it took already quite some time to really see the use case, and you had to be very visionary to understand that. I mean, there have been some interviews, I think 10 years ago, when they asked people, would you consider using your phone to answer emails and take pictures and things like that? No, never,
Right.
never. My privacy. And right now, I mean, literally, people are tied with their mobile phones to their hands like zombies. So, how do you keep up with technologies? Because, I mean, 15 years ago, for me, it was pretty simple. It was cloud. There was just starting. There was the migration of client server to centralized. I mean, I thought it was more simpler in terms of technology. Whereas nowadays, I mean, you even have technology for sales and marketing, where it used to be a pencil and a CRM, which was like Salesforce.com, and that was it. How do you keep up? I mean, the whole AI storm for me. I mean, I'm not going to say it went overnight, but it was like a snowball coming at me. It was like, what the hell happened here? Because I don't have enough. I'm not in all the data to keep up. It's because it's too much. It's like in the 80s, I know every song, every intro. I can say that's that song. But nowadays there is an overflow on music. I cannot every song anymore. And it's at least my feeling. So my question again to you, how do you keep up? How do you do that, Stijn?
Well, I think you have to be passionate about what you're doing. That helps because it does take energy and attention. It also takes evolution and growth and continuous learning. But it is indeed not easy. I mean, if you look at what our customers are going through, they're large organizations, and they're adopting technology at a certain rate, typically a little bit slower because they have to take into account their own processes, etc. But I can just name a few, right? You said the phone, right? You said, like, for example, when it came to data, we had the whole era of the big data platforms, the Hadoop stacks, right? And they were sort of immediately leapfrogged by the cloud players. And literally, as you said with the AI story, literally almost overnight, a new type of database came into the world, the vector database, because those LLM models is just one portion of the AI bit. You also need to couple it with other components like a vector database. I mean, look at it in the last 6 months. If you do vector database investment, you'll find 2 or 3 or I think 4 or 5 players that just got like $100 million. Only one this week. So literally, technology is always changing. And I think our responsibility as a software company is to innovate. So, I mean, we have to innovate because there's new capabilities we can use in our software, but we also have to innovate because our catalog, it needed to connect to the on-premise data warehouses in the olden days, if you will, right? But then it needed to connect to the Hadoop stacks, and then it needed to connect. I'm a bank. I also have like an old DB2 lying around somewhere, and some other stuff. But at the same time, hey, we have a Snowflake and a Databricks and a BigQuery. We have all of those. So we always have to innovate. That's part of our job, part of our DNA, I would say. So you constantly have to keep tabs on what's happening in the markets and figure out if that's relevant also for your business, because you can't do everything, obviously, or not everything at the same time. And I remember a quote there from Steve Ballmer, right? Once CEO of Microsoft, who then was succeeded by Satya Nadella, who's done an amazing job at uplifting Microsoft and making them relevant again as a technology player in every domain almost. And I think the quote from Ballmer was that technology companies are like sharks Sharks. So, sharks apparently, they have to swim because that's how they get oxygen. If they don't swim, if they don't keep moving, they die. And the same thing is true with a technology company. If you don't keep innovating, you die, you just become obsolete because you're not with the times anymore. I mean, if all Collibra did was Hadoop stacks, we would already be classified in legacy buckets, right? So we always have to evolve. For example, we started in an on-premise model, and then we went hosted, and then we went into cloud. And I think we started doing that already many, many moons ago. I mean, when we were both still nostalgic and romantic.
Now, that's I find that a very interesting topic that you're now mentioning. If you look at Steve Ballmer, that's the guy who was jumping like a madman on stage. And
Yep.
And then indeed kwam Satya Nadella, and he literally, I mean, he transformed he made a copy of AWS, which is called the Azure Stack, actually 3 versions, which after the 3rd version, in my personal opinion, is becoming now the biggest hyperscaler there is. I mean, and also the biggest contributor to Linux open source, which was in the past like the devil's blood for Microsoft. And now my question to you is, because you're the founder, how can you navigate a company of thousands of persons into a new direction? That's one. And how? Because I think, I mean, we can say that Collibra through the line is successful. I mean, I think you will have a hard time today, like all SaaS players in the market. You need to project always growing numbers to your investors. But how, I mean, if you're successful, the success can sometimes feel like cocaine that is going to bring you into sleep and doesn't keep you sharp on your toes. I mean, you're mentioning your corporate customers. Indeed, they're not early adopters, so they're always a little bit late by adopting new technologies. So again, my question, how do you keep yourself as a kind of a mindset? How do you stay sharp? And are you making sure that the success is not blinding you? Otherwise said, that the sun is not shining out of your ass because you're thinking, hey, I'm a hotshot because we grew the company from 3 people to 1,000 people, which is indeed a big thing. And how do you transform such a culture? Because I assume that Collibra needs to reinvent herself all the time, which makes that a lot of people within your organization needs to have that kind of growth, innovative mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the point you made earlier on the markets and what the investors expect, I mean, it doesn't matter what our investors expect in a way, because we see that there's at least a 10-year window of market ahead of us, and it's a big market. Despite the fact that we've been doing it for 15 years, we've created this category, we're leading it, but it's still evolving, so we have to keep leading it. And that's a massive opportunity in the market ahead of us. And our personal view, right, like myself, Felix, is like, we want to grab that market, right? This is our market. So that's really important for us, and that drives us. That motivates us because we do see the opportunity. Right? We have a very good perspective with that 15-year window behind us. So we're seeing all of those trends in the market, and we know, okay, we got to go after them. But indeed, you have to have, as an individual working at Collibra, you do have to have the right mindset. It is not easy. I mean, for me, I've been here 15 years. So as a matter of speaking, I've seen 15 Collibras. Like every year, it's a new company because there's a lot of new people. There's a new market you're operating in. There's a new product you're offering, etc. Right? There's new players in the market, customers that have different needs. So for me, it's every year it's a new company. But for people who just joined Collibra, for them it's weird. Oh, well, we're changing like in 2022 versus 2023, and now we're planning, like we had an all hands yesterday, and we're talking about change in the all hands. So are we planning that in 2024 we will be different again? We will change again? Yes, because if we do not change, then we have not adapted ourselves to an evolving market. And if we want to keep winning, And if we want to keep growing, we need to adapt, because otherwise we're not, in the right configuration to grab the opportunity in the market. And then that mindset is important there, right? That mindset has to be, okay, change can be scary, but let's, as individuals, lead through that change. Let's drive the change, because we know there's better ways to, fiddle with this little bit of Collibra's processes or systems to make it better or more efficient. And that's a continuous exercise. I'm not saying that's easy, right? But it has to be part of our culture. And because we hire a lot of people, we have to keep monitoring the culture. I mean, you have to keep making sure that the culture sort of stays what it was in the beginning years. The DNA is a big power of a startup or a scale-up, of course. The right mindset, absolutely. So we actually, in our onboarding or enablement programs, we actually, talk about change and things like that. And I think a big portion also, Peter, that most people tend to overlook is that, apart from the continuous learning, it's not because, when we started Collibra, we literally came out of school, right? So if you think I'm coming out of school, I'm done learning, you're thinking very wrongly. You have to keep learning. So you learn by doing, but you also learn by studying relevant, topics like strategic innovation or digital disruption or what have you. So the learning has to be there, but I think a big overlooked portion is how do you deal with the ego portion of it, right? Mm-hmm. Because you might think if things go well, all right, this is great. This is like, I'm such a great guy, right? Or we're such a great team. We're just magicking this out of existence. But, we got a lot of punches in the face in the early years. I mean, the beginning of Collibra is a long, grinding start. Now people know us across the world, but in 2008, all the way to 2014 and 15, nobody knew us. I mean, we were completely unknown. And when we were knocking on doors, all we got back was a no, we don't want to talk to you kind of thing. So we got hit in the face a lot. And that helps you reflect, like, okay, maybe we got to try something different, right? Maybe we got to change our responsibilities a little bit, change our organization structure, try a new strategy, what have you. So you do have to make sure that you're not bumping against yourself in the way. You will, right? You do bump against yourself, but you have to make sure that doesn't stop you. You cannot let yourself stand in the way of the business. And this is always one thing that I repeat everywhere I can, especially to younger entrepreneurs, but also anyone else, right? Like, don't let your ego get in the way. It usually doesn't. It usually only hurts yourself.
And do you see a difference between Belgian startup entrepreneurs and US entrepreneurs? Because when I talked to a founder of an US startup, she said to me, there are a lot of, with the overflow of money the last year, so VC money, there was a lot of ego involved and a lot of the bad masculine behavior. And is there a difference that you see? Because to be honest, I mean, you were at the same conference as I was. I mean, Pieter-Jan was also there from Showpad, and we also met Sébastien from Rosa. I mean, for me, they're all very open, humble, nice people, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. So you're asking, is there a difference between the persona of a Belgian entrepreneur versus the persona of a US entrepreneur?
Yes, lately, yeah. I mean, yeah.
I think there is. I mean, there's big cultural differences. I mean, let's take a step back and let's consider the fact that we're all, like, what's his name, Douglas Adams from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy says, we're all having the perspective of somebody standing on a big ball in space that's literally spinning around its axis around the core of molten lava or iron or whatever it is, right? So that's literally the world we live in. But if you narrow that down to the world that a Belgian lives in, the world that an American lives in, well, you just have to look at numbers. There's an order of magnitude difference. So Belgium, what is it, about 12 million people? So in a way, that's your market. I mean, I'm going to sell something to other Belgians or make software for other Belgians. Well, then you have 12 million more. So that's the scale you build for, if you will. Whereas if you're in the US, you're immediately in a market of 300 to 400 million people. So it's literally an order of magnitude difference. And just being born in one versus the other, that's the perspective you're getting. Yes, we all have the perspective of the ball flying to space. But if you grow up in a country of 12 million people, you have the perspective of a person having grown up there. If you grow up in a country of 300, 400 million people, that's the perspective that you have. So immediately you bring that to the table. Now, what you get as a side effect of that is if you're a founder of a US company, typically the amounts of money that are available to you are higher and faster. Whereas if the amounts available to a Belgian person are typically smaller and slower. Now, that doesn't mean that immediately one will be more successful than the other. It just means you have to take it into account. I mean, you cannot do things the same thing that an American would do it. And I think that's why, I lived there for 4 years and I love the experience. And we both have good things. I mean, I like the way that the Americans, when you ask them a question, can something do this? A Belgian, especially a technology person in Belgium, would more like answer it no, right? Whereas an American would more like to think, well, how can we get it to a yes? Or how can I say something that at least makes it an exciting conversation, and let's not block everything with a no. So you have that sort of attitude, which is different. You have an action-oriented aspect in an American, I think. They're very driven to action a lot. Whereas in Belgium and Europe, it's a little bit more, let's think about this for a moment. So a little bit slower to act, but maybe in the long run, smarter, right? Because it's not because if you're action running in circles, you're also not progressing, right? Now, if you take then specifically the Belgian part of it, I think Belgian typically there is this type of humbleness or modestness. I don't know where it originates from or something, but we're always a little bit more careful. We're not going to be brazen like Americans. We should be a little bit more brazen, actually. But as a matter of speech, they would have zero things, nothing but a slide deck, and pitch it to you as the greatest thing in the world. Whereas we would have to tinker with something for years and years until we feel like, yeah, it's getting there. And then we'd be comfortable enough to maybe talk to somebody else about it. Right? So I'm not saying that either one is good or bad, but I'm saying that we can all learn a little bit from each other.
But if you look at from another perspective, and if you look at from the perspective of prospects and customers in Belgium towards the US, and and it has changed, and it has certainly changed. But I still remember around 2000-ish, and it still lasted until, I think in the third or the second wave of startups in Belgium, around the just after Netlog, the Showpad era where it started there. I mean, then the whole startup scene in Belgium become like a rock star. And to be honest, rock stars, they need to learn to play the guitar. But that's a different story. But the thing I want to make, the point I want to make is that I had lots of no's. I still remember today, even, and I'm going to say that out loud, Proximus, which was called Belgacom, and they said, Peter, your technology, it's a small company. Now it's been acquired by Veritas Semantic. And now it's a serious software. And I'm like, it's the same code. It just has a different color. You're going to pay 4 or 10 times more, and you will get crappy support. And sorry to bring it like that, but it is a little bit exaggerated. And we were always considered as small and things like that. Whereas I would expect it a little bit. Is it because of the Lernout Houseby trauma that Belgium carried for years in terms of technology? I don't know. But in the US, I always had more the feeling that companies supported the startups more. Like if I look at recently, we just bought Busy Software, which is a startup in Ghent, which is an intelligence platform for prospecting. I mean, I know it's a startup, but I feel like you need to also give them a chance. I know it's not going to be perfect, and I know they're going to give me a big discount for that. But has that changed also for you? Is it still for you the same in Belgium, like Collibra, blah blah blah? But the other countries were more or faster supportive because we have a more like late adopter mentality.
There's a lot to unpack there, Peter. But let's start with the rockstar part. Fully agree with there has been this growing idolization of entrepreneurs or founders, and in a way, I think that's a good thing, because I think in Belgium we could use a little bit more push. Like, hey, it's okay to try and start something. It's going to be a hard road, but let's go. I mean, who knows what grows out of it. But at the same time, you want to be careful with that, because not everybody really is made out to be an entrepreneur. I mean, if everybody was an entrepreneur, that wouldn't work either. So the rockstar thing, I don't think we have to push it. We don't have to push it much farther. My view personally is always the more successful Belgian entrepreneurs, the better. It's that simple. With respect to the Belgian aspect, I mean, today, I think a lot of other Belgians think that Collibra is an American company. I mean, we were in the news recently with the so-called move to Amsterdam, which was a whole kerfuffle. But essentially, we are a Belgian company, right? We just have offices all over, but we started the company in Belgium. Our office in Gare Maritime, beautiful office, always welcome for a visit. So we are a Belgian company, but by now, after 15 years, we're a global company. What I will say is that in my experience, especially in these earlier years, Belgians don't necessarily buy from other Belgians. I think there's a risk averseness in us that makes it safer to buy the big American thing. Nobody's ever been fired for buying whatever, right? Rather than buying from another Belgian company. I don't know what drives that, but it's a phenomenon that I've experienced. So very quickly, we started selling our software out of Belgium. Now, it wasn't necessarily easier there, right? But like the American market, for example, is a big unified market, whereas the European market is very fragmented. I mean, yes, it's a unified market, but they're still speaking Dutch in the Netherlands and French in France and German in Germany, right? So, and it's not necessarily about the language; it's about the different cultures. So, I mean, we had to work equally hard in other countries. It wasn't because we went to the Netherlands and we're Belgian, they thought it was cute, so they buy from us. No, we had to work equally hard, but there were bigger markets out there. I think we should support a little bit other Belgians a little bit more. I mean, if you have somebody who's coming to you and they're a Belgian startup and you're a big Belgian corporation and there's a value proposition there, get together and partner, right? But then it's also on the entrepreneurs to play nice and deliver value to those organizations.
No, of course.
Yeah, that's my view on it, Peter. Hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah. Now we're going to go into another direction. We're going to go more personal right now. I mean, 15 years Collibra. If we would go back in time and we would meet the Stijn with a little less gray hair, and you could do it all over again, what would be your advice, lessons learned, failures, fuck ups, whatever, that you look back on? I would have done that differently, because I look at myself, the biggest lesson I learned were never the wins, but really went all wrong. And it's easy to talk about it right now, but in the midst of the storm, it was really painful. So I was wondering with you, if you look in terms of reflection, what would you give your advice to your 15-year younger self professionally?
Good question, Peter. Going back in time 15 years, so where was I? Where am I? I mean, it's a long time. I sometimes compare Collibra years with dog years. A dog year is 7 human years. So every day at Collibra sometimes feels like a week, and a week feels like a month, and a month feels like a year, because there's so many things happening. So it's like you're living multiple lives in a way. So thinking back 15 years and all the stories in between, I've forgotten more than I remember, obviously. But if I would be able to go back in time, first of all, I would sell a time machine because that seemed like a good business then. But if I would be able to go back in time, I would maybe not say anything to myself, because you have to remember that the journey we had along the way, with all of the mistakes we've made, so I can give myself advice about every mistake, but some of the mistakes were actually fundamental to our success, because they made us go faster or slower, and the time window to the market was faster or slower. So it's not because you make a mistake along the way that you should try to avoid making that mistake. So if I go back in time, I would not necessarily tell anything to myself, because I might end up, or a company might end up at a different point from where we are today. And I think we're in a pretty good place today. So I like where we are, and we always want to do better, of course. But if I would give some advice, like, things that I would tell somebody else to do differently in their own journeys, I'll give you one example. So, for example, expansion. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you're very opportunistic, right? And I have a lot of drive. So I was like a young dog who's chasing every tail. There's an opportunity there, an opportunity there, an opportunity there. Let's go there, let's go there, let's go there. And it's fine, that you're young, you have energy, blah, blah, blah. You're working across time zones. That's fine. But then at some point in time, I had the belief, Asia Pacific, we also have to do stuff there. So I was in New York at that time, and I was working at 6 a.m. so I could connect with Europe, right? Then 9 a.m. starts opening in New York. Then 5 p.m. New York starts closing. It never closes, right? 4 a.m. most things close though. But California is still busy, so you can go until 8 or 9 p.m. And then, in California, they're also checking out. But lo and behold, 8 or 9 p.m. in New York time is actually morning in Australia time. So I started calling on Australia, and I was literally exhausting myself. I mean, that's not sustainable, but I was not necessarily thinking about it, because I was letting my opportunistic entrepreneur drive myself a little bit too much. And we have a business in Asia Pacific, right? We have people there, a great team. But if I look at how I acted, I mean, this is even before New York. Hey, we have to go to Asia Pacific. I think I would just ignore that market altogether back then. It was way too early. I mean, it's more important back then and still today for us to make sure that we win that North American market, because that is the battleground upon which global software companies are built. Those who win that market, those have a chance at being a global player. Those who do not win that market, I mean, we would lose 60% of our business if you didn't have that market. So that's a lot, right? So that would be one advice for me, is think a little bit more about, opportunistic and immediate action associated with. Think a little bit more strategically about what is more important to win. So that's one thing that I've learned over the 15 years. Next to 99 other things, but we could talk about that for a whole hour.
I mean, a last question, Stijn. I mean, you were not doing it alone. I mean, you started the company with a couple of other co-founders. I mean, if you look at your relationship with the co-founders, I mean, friendship is, over time, it can evolve, can it change? I mean, how do you keep your relationship with your co-founders fresh and sharp? Because you've known each other for quite some time. You celebrated successes. You also have been in pain. You've argued a lot. I mean, if you look at the combination of the co-founders, what kind of lesson do you take there? Because I assume that you are all very complementary.
Well, there's only 2 founders left in the company, myself and Felix. Felix is the CEO already from the beginning, so quite an impressive feat, and obviously done a good job. But there were other co-founders that we lost along the way inside the company. I mean, they're still around, obviously. But if I look back at our original founding team in 2008, I wouldn't say that we were necessarily complementary as much. I mean, there was complement, obviously, but there was actually insufficient complementarity because we started to go to market in 2008. We had a year of preparation, actually. So we started, it's actually 16 years of work that we've been doing. We started about 3, 6, 9 months in. I don't even remember when, but Felix and I are talking like, I don't think we're going to be able to sell anything this way. I mean, we're trying hard, working hard, speaking to a lot of people, trying to build product at the same time, but we're not selling. I mean, it's a fact. You can just measure it in the number, right? And then we onboarded Benny, an additional co-founder. So that, like the original founding team was missing that as a complementary piece for sure. And you can see that from just looking at it. I mean, there was Felix, Peter, myself, and Damien. And all of us, I mean, I'm an engineer, but all the other three were computer scientists. So we're all the same in a way, right? So yeah, you could immediately, just from looking at it, you can immediately say, well, there's complementarity and skills, like in what somebody is good at or what somebody is better at in the team. But we were clearly missing something. Now, how do you keep that fresh? Well, some of the people we lost along the way professionally, right? So with the busyness, you don't always see them as much. But Felix, we speak regularly. I mean, especially last week, we were in London. We had what we call our Data Citizens on Tour event, which is like a user event. Always very exciting, but also very exhausting. I mean, Felix and I barely had time to talk there, maybe for 10 minutes, because every step you make, like you walk 1 meter, trying to get to the restroom, and a customer's already talking to you. Oh, I love Collibra. I have some ideas about what you should do and can do better, yada, yada, yada. So this is all fun and good and productive, but at the same time, it's very busy. But for example, that's a place where even ever so briefly, you're able to connect, or, with the good weather, you just pop up the barbecue and, you break some bread. But our chairman, Tony, supported us from the beginning across all those years. Big part of our success, I would say, with his advice and his mirror towards these young bucks, if you will. He always said you have to always be able to keep talking. If you are not able to talk anymore, then you're going to have a problem. Imagine you're a founding team or a management team. It doesn't matter how many people are in the company. But if you cannot talk anymore in that management meeting, then you cannot progress anymore. So you always have to find ways to talk.
Okay, cool. Now we've met each other in real life at the We Are Sales conference, and a normal engineer, they hate salespeople. They don't understand them. They think they're all spoiled brats with brown shoes, just eating and drinking. Now, super engineers like yourself embraces sales and also doing sales or helping sales. How did your image of sales, because sales is the engine of the company. I mean, that's where, like you said, you can have conversations, but at a certain point, there needs to be signed contracts and money needs to come in. And this typical solution of Collibra doesn't sell itself, I assume. It's not bol.com or whatever, or DINAction. Now, how does your image, that's the last question, how does your image of sales has evolved throughout the years? Because I assume you have worked closely with the sales persons in your own organization.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Benny and I were on the road prospecting for more than 5 years. But we would be away from home for 3 weeks, back for 2, and then we'd be away for 3 weeks again. And not on big budgets, right? So there was room sharing and all that stuff. So obviously there's a very rich learning experience for both parties. And I would say that having to do that, because otherwise you're not making money, right? Having to do that has given me a very different view, because I now see what is necessary. So you do have that classic trope where the technical person thinks that the salespeople are liars, or they're just whining and dining, right? Whatever it is. And on the other side of the fence, on salespeople, there's maybe also a bit of a view like, I was talking to the customer, they have this need. I said yes, can't you guys just build it by tomorrow, right? Like, well, yeah, but we're still building the thing that was sold last week, and that's going to take us 3 months. So there's a mismatch in expectations about how fast something can be built. So there is this, wrong perspective on both sides. But I think smart, responsible adult people learn to respect each other's profession. I mean, the salespeople, if they would not be successful at their job, however it is that they do their job, and it's complicated because in a way they're programming people, right? Especially in large organizations, it's like trying to herd cats sometimes, because those large organizations have a way of, stepping on each other's toes and tripping over their own feet sometimes. So the salespeople really has to almost like help like a champion throughout the organization sometimes. And that's complicated. I mean, there's a lot of fog of war involved. So I think there has to be respect from the engineer that they're doing a hard job. They're making it look easy, maybe, right? Because that's maybe the type of people that they are. But they're bringing in the money. If they wouldn't do that, then, there's no salary for you to pay. On the other side, if the engineers are not making product, there's nothing to sell either. So I think in a responsible adult mindset, there is respect to one another. And if you resort to those, caricatures of each other, I don't think you're going to have a healthy relationship.
Yeah, that's an amazing answer. Stijn, I want to thank you for the energy, for your time. It was very inspiring to hear you talk. And I wish you all the best and great success with Collibra. And I hope within 10 years you make that big exit. And I don't know, you can sit on the beach or whatever. I don't know what you want to do within 10 years.
I think if I stop working, I die, Peter. So I'll sit on the beach the day before I die then. I think there's 10 years of opportunity in the market, but by then we might see another mountain of opportunity that is even higher, because that's what happens. If you grow, you're climbing the mountain, and then you're getting a new perspective and you realize, oh, there's more opportunity ahead. Let's go get it. So that's always our focus. But thanks for having me over. Thanks for asking me very smart questions in smart ways. It was fun meeting you face-to-face at the We Are Sales event. Great event, by the way. And it was fun doing this podcast. Have a nice day and stay frosty.
Hey, it's Peter here. Thanks a lot for listening to What's on Your Mind. Looking forward to your opinions and comments. And don't forget to subscribe on psgrow.com and leave your email address to stay tuned for future episodes. Bye!